As an autistic person myself, I know how quickly our bodies and our communication can be misunderstood or ignored entirely by people in power. Today, I want to talk about a case out of Minnesota that should never have happened. A case where Alaiya Rahman, an autistic woman, was violently pulled from her vehicle by ICE and who later delivered one of the most powerful testimonies I've ever heard at the February 3rd shadow hearing. This isn't just her story. It's a story about disability, policing, and the way autistic people are treated when we at our most vulnerable. The incident began when Miss Ramon was caught in a traffic jam on her way to a doctor's appointment, and it escalated far beyond anything reasonable. Officers approached her vehicle and yelled conflicting orders, and instead of recognizing clear signs of distress, sensory overload, and despite her repeatedly saying that she was disabled and had a brain injury and was trying to get to her doctor, they responded with force. She was dragged from her car, she was handled roughly, and at every step, her communication differences, the very things that defined her autistic experience, were treated as defiance instead of disability. This is a pattern autistic people know too well. When we freeze, we're accused of noncompliance. When we stim, we are seen as suspicious. And when we're overwhelmed, we're treated as threats. At the February 3rd shadow hearing, Ms. Ramon spoke, and what she said cut through every excuse and every attempt to minimize what happened to her. Her testimony wasn't just emotional, it was educational. She explained what autistic shutdown looks like. She explained how officers ignored her strength to communicate. She explained how the system failed to recognize her humanity, and she did it with strength, clarity, and courage.
I'm a Bangladeshi American, born in northern Wisconsin, and I'm a disabled person with autism and a traumatic brain injury. Not all autistic brains do this, but mine fixates on sounds, numbers, and patterns. And while what the world saw happen to me exactly 3 weeks ago today on video was a terrible violation, it is still nothing compared to the horrific practices I saw inside the Whipple Center. So I am here today with a duty to the people who have not had the privilege of coming home, and I offer this data because these practices must end now. On January 13th, on the way to my 39th appointment at Hennepin County's Traumatic Brain Injury Center, I encountered a traffic jam caused by ICE vehicles and no signs indicating how to get around it. I had not wanted to pull into a blocked, chaotic intersection, but verbally agreed to do so and rolled down my window after an agent yelled, "Move, I will break your effing window." His first instruction. Agents on all sides of my vehicle yelled conflicting threats and instructions that I could not process while watching for pedestrians. Then the glass of the passenger side window flew across my face. I yelled, "I'm disabled," at the hands grabbing at me, and an agent said, "Too late." I felt immersed in a pattern, and I thought of Genoa Donald, an autistic black man killed by police during a traffic stop in 2021. I remembered Mr. Sliberio Gonzalez, who was killed by ICE in his vehicle last year. An agent pulled a large combat knife in front of my face, which I thought was for cutting me, and later learned was used to cut off my seatbelt. Shooting pain went through my head, neck, and wrists when I hit the ground face first and people leaned on my back. I felt the pattern, and I thought of Mr. George Floyd, who was killed 4 blocks away. I was carried face down through the street by my cuffed arms and legs while yelling that I had a brain injury and was disabled. I now cannot lift my arms normally. I was never asked for ID, never told I was under arrest, never read my rights, and never charged with a crime. Approaching the Whipple Center, I saw black and brown bodies shackled together, chained together, being marched by yelling agents outdoors. I continue to hear the word bodies because that is how agents refer to us. We're bringing in a body. They're bringing in bodies, 7, 8 at a time. Where do I put them? We can't use that room. There's already a body in there. You have no reason to believe you will make it out alive if you are already being called a body. Agents repeatedly had to stop and ask how to do tasks. I received no medical screening, phone call, or access to a lawyer. I was denied a communication navigator when my speech began to slur. Agents laughed as I tried to immobilize my own neck. I asked for my cane and was told no, pulled up my arms and prodded forward in leg irons by agents laughing and saying, "Walk, you can do it, walk." Agents did not know if the facility had a wheelchair. When I was finally placed in one to be taken to interrogation, an agent taunted, "You were driving, right? So your legs do work." I pleaded for emergency medical care for over an hour after my vision had become blurry, my heart rate went through the roof, and the pain in my neck and head became unbearable. It was denied. When I became unable to speak, my cellmate pleaded for me. The last sounds I remember before I blacked out on the cell floor were my cellmate banging on the door, pleading for a medic, and a voice outside saying, "We don't want to step on ICE's toes." When I opened my eyes at Hennepin County's emergency room, I learned I was brought there to be treated for assault. The impacts of DHS detention on my physical, mental, and financial well-being and safety have been very severe, but I do not deserve more humane treatment than anyone else, US citizen or not. And I am here today with a strong spirit and a duty to the many people who haven't had the privilege to tell their stories or see their loved ones come home.
This is not an isolated incident. Autistic people, especially autistic women, autistic people of color, and autistic people with multiple marginalized identities face disproportionate harm in police encounters. In November, ICE violently tackled a non-verbal autistic man for being non-compliant when he didn't answer their questions. The incident occurred outside the Family Dollar location near the intersection of 26th and Millard Ave in the Little Village neighborhood of Chicago. One of the employees said, "Why are they beating up this special boy? They should call a city doctor. He comes into my store every day to get a little treat. I love him dearly, but he has the mind of a child." 10 months ago, a 17-year-old Victor Perez was shot 9 times while he was behind a chain link fence after a neighbor called 911 and claimed that Perez was drunk and wielding a knife.
The police shooting of a teen with autism ending in tragedy. Victor Perez has died after being removed from life support a short time ago. The 17-year-old was wielding a knife when he was shot 9 times by police. And tonight, why the neighbors who called 911 are now apologizing. Here's ABC's Zoreen Shaw.
Tonight, a week after multiple Idaho police officers shot a teenager with autism, the controversial incident happening during a barbecue last week. A nearby witness making this call to police.
He's pretty drunk. He's just running out with a knife and then falling over, and I think he was stabbed in the throat on accident just now.
As seen in this video, when police arrived, they commanded the boy to drop the knife. Seconds later, as Perez steps towards them, police open fire from the other side of the fence, leaving him hospitalized.
I just want answers. Why with my nephew they used shoot to kill, because that's what they did.
After that graphic video went viral, protests erupting in Pocatello. The father and son that made that 911 call apologizing to the Perez family.
I had no idea this would happen. I'm so sorry. Are you doing okay?
No.
I'm so sorry.
Help us through this tragedy of Victor Perez.
Earlier today, the Pocatello community holding this vigil in support of the family in front of the hospital treating Perez, saying they hope the family gets justice.
It could have been any one of our kids, and no kid should have had to go through what they went through.
I highlighted just 3 cases, but there is so many out there. And here's the truth. Our neurology shouldn't be a risk factor. Our communication shouldn't be criminalized. Our bodies shouldn't be treated as threats. When law enforcement doesn't understand autism, we pay the price. These cases highlight a systemic failure, lack of disability training, misinterpretation of autistic behaviors, escalation instead of de-escalation, and a culture that prioritizes control over understanding. Autistic people deserve safety, we deserve accommodations, we deserve to be recognized as human beings with different needs, not as problems to be subdued. Ms. Ramon's testimony was brave, but it shouldn't take a hearing for people to believe us, and it shouldn't take trauma for the system to admit it needs to change. If you're watching this, here's what you can do. Listen to autistic people when we talk about our experiences, support disability-led advocacy groups pushing for policing reform, share her story so it isn't buried or dismissed, demand training, accountability, and policies that protect disabled people instead of harming us. Because what happened to her could happen to any one of us. And none of us should have to live in fear of the people who are supposed to protect us. I am an autistic advocate. I will keep speaking out because our lives, our safety, our dignity are worth fighting for.